Oyin Owolabi came to the United States from Nigeria at the age of 10 and later attended Fairleigh Dickinson University, a private college in New Jersey, where she now resides with her husband and 3 young children. Oyin was a former chairwoman of the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, the former service unit manager for Girl Scouts of America, and a former member of the Environmental Commission in Millburn Short Hills. She also served on the local school board while overseeing the bond referendum implementation and purchase of a Washington school as property committee chairperson. Oyin is now a Republican candidate for the Township Committee of Millburn Short Hills, with her platform being focused on local government accountability, transparency, and adherence to the rule of law. It was my pleasure to get to know her a bit better and discuss the not-so-civil process of running for office in America today, even local offices. We discussed her reasons for choosing a career in politics, her background as a scientist, and why she believes she's the right candidate for Millburn Township Committee. I hope you enjoy our chat as much as I did. Well, there's our legal warning, Owen. We are now on camera, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Joey.
So as I mentioned briefly in our upfront chats, we here at Truth 30 are trying to help understand the political vibe, not only within our culture, but within our politicians as well. And historically, we've covered a lot of topics like defund the police, critical race theory, gender ideology, and recently firearm legislation, which are the biggest topics that divide us. But we also believe that online, we dislike each other more than we do in person. And we're going to try and prove that a little bit today, specifically in the fact that you are a Republican candidate for Millburn Township Committee.
Sure.
And I am a Democrat here in San Francisco. And I've started to look at your policies to try to understand exactly what you guys are talking about there. And so that's kind of where we can dive in. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So one of the first questions I have for any politician, whether I'm doing it on camera or off camera, is why would you choose to put yourself through all of this online nonsense and criticism with and without merit, right? It's a very difficult job. Why would you do this? And why did you choose this?
So thank you for that question, Joey. So I have always served my community, and this is the greatest country on earth, as far as I'm concerned. I embrace all that America has to offer. And I feel like it is my duty to give back. So my experience on the school board, gave me the momentum I needed to realize, that I'm a unifier. This is the feedback that I received from fellow board members. So I realized in this politically divided time, my skills and my approach to life give me what is needed to govern in this divided time.
Well, that's great. And so you did mention the school board. How long were you a member of the school board?
I was on our school board for 4 years. I saw problems, to solve and things that we could improve in our, top quality school district. I don't know if you're familiar with the Millburn School District. I wanted to bring the dimension of my background as an immigrant, first of all, as well as my experience as an African American in my community. We are all here to ensure that all of our, children are served in the best way possible. And I wanted my voice to be included and useful in that process. I decided to run for township committee because, there will be a transformation in our town, with high density housing and affordable housing coming into the community. And I feel like my background and experience in life and business I'm as a scientist also, and previously serving on the Board of Education would give me an advantage, in helping the community to best, integrate what is to come.
That's great. One thing here, we're in San Francisco, we have seen how political school boards are. We actually, about, 2 or 3 months ago, voted out 3 of our school board members because they were trying to change the names of our schooling during a pandemic. They thought that was more important than the job they needed to do, and we voted them out. And so I asked you that question, has the school board itself become more political in your 4 years than it has previously, or how do you see that?
I mean, I can only speak from my experience, and, while I was on the school board here in Millburn, you really couldn't tell who was what. Okay. It was not about political affiliations. It was, what is important for our children. And, and I feel like we must not be divided as Americans. We must listen to each other and come to a compromise as to how we move forward. I believe in our school system. and I can, feel like I could, play a key role in our township government, by keeping dialogue productive and positive. I'm aware of what happened in San Francisco, but, I do not think we have that type of situation with our school governance here in my town, but we do have tension within our local governing body. And, residents are speaking up. In fact, the mayor and another township committee member are subject to a recall petition in the same way that the San Francisco school board members were. I fully support, residents, taxpayers, and voters' rights to speak and, to have their voices heard.
That's great. So let me do this. We basically looked at your policies, and you have a 5-point plan. I'm just going to go over them, then we'll kind of address them one by one. You have a fight to modify development plans, education of local children, reduction of crime, protect property values, and preserve Millburn's landmarks and historical assets. Those are kind of your 5-point plan that you and Frank Saccomonte have come together and talked about. And so what changes, if any, do you see with that 5-point plan that are different than what's happening today? Why don't we just start specifically with the plan to implement and improve the school system from K through 12?
So actually, the Township Committee does not have any input with regards to initiatives like K through 12 education. But you are spot on your other observations. National politics does not have any, national politics have no place in our local, governing initiatives. So, when you talk about our 5-point plan, I can go on to elaborate on that. Those are what we stand for as, the governing body of the town.
That'd be great.
So you mentioned the 5-point plan, and just to repeat that, they're, to fight for sensible development, because that's what we're battling right now currently in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. There's no sensible development. And to safeguard our children's exceptional schools, we have a fantastic school system. Our district is, top notch in the state of New Jersey. And in order for us to keep that top notch, we need to fight for sensible development. So they kind of like go hand in hand. Okay. And we need to reduce crime and prioritize pedestrian safety. There's been an uptick in crime. There's a lot of things that Frank and I have put together when it comes to some of the initiatives that we will be bringing into Township Committee once we are elected. And then we also need to protect our property values. There are a lot of changes in town, as I mentioned earlier, and that will impact the property value of the homes in town. And then we also need to preserve, the landmarks. I mean, one of the main reasons while door knocking that residents are sharing is that they move to town for the schools and for the easy access, commute to New York City. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, those are some of the things that we'll tackle once we're elected to Township Committee.
Those are great. I think that one of the things that really surprised me about doing some homework on what you and Frank were doing, and I don't think I did a good job. Frank Saccomonte is your partner on this. You guys are running together to be on the Township Committee. And specific to what I mentioned earlier, as far as our divide culturally and politically, is that there's been local press that specifically called you guys out, you specifically, as a threat to democracy and extreme candidates on the far right. And so as I look through your policies that you just talked about, specific to, modern development plans, education for kids, reduction of crime, property value assessment, and then historical landmark preservation, none of those seem extreme to me. So when people come to you, and you see this in the press, which you do, because this was in local Millburn press and a couple other folks on the Democratic Party saying that we are up against extreme candidates, our democracy is in danger. I mean, where does that come from specific to your plan? Have you or Frank, ever introduced anything that goes against our democracy or has any legs that would carry it to the extreme? Because I don't see it. and if I could have found it, I would have pointed it out to you. I don't see anything that you guys are doing that is extreme. Where does that come from?
Actually, the Township Committee does not, as I mentioned earlier, does not have any input to our schools. But then to bridge into the question that you just brought up regarding the article, When I read that article, Joey, I thought shame on my opponents, Annette Romano and Michael Cohen, for trying to build fear-mongering and divide the Melbourne Short Hills community, and also trying to create sensationalism. The statement that you read from my opponents is loaded with words that are, meant to excite people in exactly the wrong way. These very same people are not willing to face me and my running mate, in a debate to talk about our local issues. I think that says it all. They have no respect for people who they are seeking votes from. They expect them to just go with the party line and that's it. They don't feel that they have to explain their positions and voting records. This is, I feel, is an insult to our form of democracy and to my fellow neighbors. We have real issues. And I feel like this distracts from the real issues. Right. And the issues are high, density housing, overdevelopment, and the fact that the township committee has voted to build on our town dump. Shame on all of them, Joey. Shame on all of them. Annette Romano might not be on the DS today, but every single person who voted for this horrific plan, she handpicked herself, as the leader of the Democratic Party in town. And the plan is for her to deliver Melbourne in the hands of developers. That's what it is. And I'll say, nice try, Annette Romano and Michael Cohen, but I know that the residents of Melbourne Short Hills are smarter than that and can see through that article. We are here to serve our community. We're here to solve the problems of our local residents that we have control over, as an elected township committee. That's
Let me do this. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's one thing that I thought may actually feed into some of the divide. So let me educate my audience on this. There is a change.org from the residents and former residents of the Melbourne Short Hills Committee to reverse the decision to build the 100% high density income segregated apartment complex at 9 Main Street. And the proposed plan calls for 75 apartments for very low income residents on less than 1 acre of property. The parcel of land has been contaminated for over a century. And the township has authorized the second phase of a DEP remediation, and the cleanup costs are projected to be in the millions. So this is part and parcel of what you guys are talking about. And there's Donna Davis of Melbourne said this: I am deeply disappointed in the township committee members who feel that the plan presented to us would reflect the values of Melbourne. Are we really thinking that it's okay to sector off an area potentially contaminated, almost under the railroad tracks, near high wires, next to a middle school in the center of town, and point out that those residents are only there because of their low income? Surely we can do better. And I think that even as someone who's researched this at a minimal level, it seems as though this should not be a political fight. How is it that they're justifying this? It seems to be not only toxic in the sense that they're building it over a toxic dump, it just seems very divisive. And it doesn't seem like it's doing the good for anyone. And most of the literature I read on this, it seems like everyone in Melbourne is aligned on this, that there shouldn't be any division on this. How is this become so cantankerous?
Well, I mean, I would say that everyone who's heard about this dump project is definitely against it. I will start by saying that I have examined the settlement agreement, from many other towns across New Jersey, and I couldn't find a single agreement with more than 50, and I'm going to give you some numbers, with more than 55% unmet need, satisfaction. Most of them were like 20 to 30% range. And, I couldn't find a single agreement where there were 100% income segregated projects, mandated as part of the unmet need satisfaction, or even a single agreement where densities of 40 units per acre were allowed. Melbourne was saddled with the worst deal in the state of New Jersey. And this deal could have disastrous, you mentioned it, disastrous implications on the future of our town. I think it is imperative that we bring on, new legal counsel that will fight for the interests of the residents of Melbourne, instead of keeping them in the dark, and shutting them out of participating at every step of the way. I've spoken several times, regarding the 100% income segregated housing that's going to go on a dump. I mean, it's also 100 feet away from our middle school. You can imagine what would happen with the, excavating and the cleanup of that project. Well, what it can do, it would potentially to our, faculty and students. Whenever anyone gets sick from that project, it will be, ascribed to the fact that it was a dump. I'm just as shocked as you that they would like to move forward with this, but that's why Frank and I are the only candidate who is stopping this project.
And that is specifically along party lines then? So the Democrats currently on the township committee, every
Correct.
single one of them is okay with this project.
Correct.
And what is their reasoning behind it? Do they have information that I haven't seen, in the sense of, we've done this, evaluation. Let's just say like it's a Superfund site. We've actually cleared it for all levels of toxicity. We know that if we actually build on this site, that there's no danger to the people that we put in this location. There's no danger to the children that are 100 yards away from this excavation. Have they actually proved with documentation and scientific evidence that they're good, that this is like clean?
No, they have not done that.
Have they done any homework in that regard?
No, they have not done that.
Okay, so this is the kind of stuff where I'm just trying to figure out, like, this isn't a party thing. This is just, to me, gross negligence on someone's part. And I can't find any reason to believe that this should not be discussed as exactly what you and Frank are doing, in the specific sense of, hey, guys, we should do more homework on this. We need more scientific evaluation. We need to have people like checkbox these problems specific to our community. This is involving low-income people to begin with, which doesn't look good. Just the optics of it look terrible. Then you're involving children's health and well-being, which just doesn't seem like that should be an issue for any politician because it doesn't look good. And then you guys are pushing back, specifically you as a scientist, and saying, guys, we need more homework on this. We need to do better. And we're not. That's the kind of stuff that drives everyone in the, as we talked about, there's a recent Gallup poll that there's the 67% of our population is the exhausted majority with our politics. This is an example where this shouldn't be a big, divide between our political parties. This is just a conversation that needs to happen and say, hey, look at this. This doesn't seem accurate. If you guys do scrap this, which I hope you do from everything I can gather, what is your remedy? What do you guys want to do in lieu of this project? How are you guys going to help with affordable housing in Millburn?
So before I even answer that question, I would also like to touch on the fact that Fair Share Housing, if you check their website from 2010, actually says that Millburn didn't have much activity from builders. Our plan on our website at oyinfrank.com, stop the toxic dump housing projects, which is part of our unmet need and isn't something that we actually have to do. Overlay density that is more equitable across town. It takes a lot when you dive into this, to incentivize builders from coming here and building. 16 units per acre is a much more reasonable scale if you think about it, than 40 units per acre. So allowing more senior housing, relieves pressure on the schools, much needed for, childcare purposes and having family close by. What my opponents would want to do is they all want to, just take the existing plan and run with it, and as you mentioned earlier, the Democrats are being controlled by the governor, really, who donates to Fair Share Housing. Millburn got a very bad deal, Joey. In fact, it's the worst deal in the state of New Jersey, and at the hands of our local township committee members and the hired professionals who are supposed to be protecting our interests. This is why I'm running. This is why, Frank and I are running to fight for the residents so that, they don't have the opportunity to destroy the schools and the quality of life in my town.
So this goes all the way up to the governor and then the town and the mayor itself too, correct? They're all in on this project?
Well, they are all in on this project, correct. Okay.
Yeah, I must be missing something. I just don't get it. So yeah, go ahead. So it's as far as thank you for the background there, but what do you and Frank propose? Is it the 16 units per versus 40? Is that the idea?
Yes, we have a lot of suggestions. I mean, we would like to stop the toxic dump housing projects.
Yeah.
Research does not even support the income segregation. If you look that up, stop the high density 40 units per acre first story apartment building, across from single family neighborhoods like South Mountain and Wyoming. That's some of the areas in town that will be, gravely affected. Preserve all of the things that people come to Melbourne Short Hills for.
Mm-hmm.
Which is our schools and easy commute and park-like settings. We just need to try and preserve that.
Well, speaking of preservation, what is it that is happening currently with historical Melbourne assets that specifically you and Frank are against? Are they taking down certain pieces and parts of the history that bother you guys?
Yeah. So there were two buildings turned down in a rushed manner. That should have been designated historic. Instead, a demolition permit was issued, but not signed. So the buildings came down without following proper procedures. I've been able to confirm, but I understand that someone on the township committee encouraged this behavior in order to avoid, there being, any delay. And this was because, if those two buildings had been designated, the entire downtown would have been designated as historic district, and this would have disrupted the big plans of the developers who have been funding, certain township committee members' campaigns. You can see where this is going, Joey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously politics is money. That's everywhere. And so is that the same kind of thing that you're seeing? This isn't just local politics in the sense that we want to preserve a couple historic buildings. It's that there's developers involved who are funding campaigns of people in charge of designating historical assets and landmarks. And does that also ratchet up to the mayor and the governor on this front as well?
Correct.
It does. And what would be the disadvantage of having Melbourne as a town be protected en masse as a historical town? What am I missing there?
Well, I mean, if we wouldn't deem the entire town historic, but there are certain part of town that is historic. Okay. But overall, Joey, what we want to do is actually protect our property values and preserve Melbourne's landmark. And it's the 5 points that Frank and I actually stand for, and to safeguard our children's exceptional schools. I mean, if you don't fight for sensitive development, then you don't safeguard the exceptional schools. And then you're not able to reduce crime. You're not able to prioritize pedestrian safety. It's like a domino effect. And then you're not able to protect, property values. And then you're ultimately not able to preserve Melbourne's landmarks and historic assets.
Okay. And has that happened? I know that COVID is kind of an outlier specific to crime, right? We've seen crime elevated almost everywhere, every major city, even local communities. Here in San Francisco, obviously, it's been pretty awful. Was there a specific rise in crime over the last 2 or 3 years while you were at the school board, as an example? And how do you have some control over that as the township committee? What does that look like? What can you guys implement to help reduction of crime in your little city?
So, as for the crime and even statistics of crime statistics, this is something I would love to give you more detail on, Joey, but the current township committee, and I should emphasize again here that, we're all handpicked by my Democrat opponent, has been intentionally hiding crime statistics from our community. We have asked them repeatedly to make, complete unabridged historical police blotter available to the community, yet they have refused to do so. If you look at the website right now, the crime reporting only goes back to May of this year. Okay. And there's nothing about any incidents that occurred in June of this year. So, also when they promoted, officers earlier this year, one officer was noted as having prevented a rape from occurring in our community. Yet this incident was never reported, on in the police blotter or in any news. I cannot think of any good reasons for any why these incidents are being hidden from the community. But I can promise you that once Frank and I are elected to office, we will never condone, the obstruction of freedom of information from our community. And so, back to your question, while I would love to give you the details about how much crime, has risen in our community, I can only work off of what I have learned, in speaking with longtime residents in town, which is that they have noticed a severe uptick in criminal activity. And, once we fix the underreporting problem, we will work with our community and not, again, against them, as the current administration and their, puppet master have done. The collective will decide on the best way forward.
Is part of that, let's just say you and Frank do get elected on the township committee, is part of your duty then, is there budgetary purse strings that you guys control specific to police or to mental health services or all the above? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely talk about that once we get on township committee and look at the budget and see where, it could best suit the town. Be it, hiring more police, strategizing, where to place them around town. And, Frank and I have talked about a lot of things that we can actually implement once elected. I may not be able to share that openly right now, but yes.
Right. No, I understand there's certain things, because I know off camera we talked about some of the ideas technology-wise that you guys want to implement, but you can't share that publicly, which makes sense because you don't really want to kind of give your hand to the criminals there. But yeah, this is good to hear. And again, I fail to see the division with what you guys are doing. I do see where you guys are divided specific to this affordable housing saga that has been going on for a couple of years there, as far as my homework is concerned. And I think that what's really neat for me is that as much as I wanted to poke holes in any Republican candidate, just historically, is that I couldn't find anything. And I think this is probably more akin to local government, to like your earlier mention. It's at the, macro level of Congress and our Senate, our Congress people, our lawmakers in general. They fight over the macro issues of abortion, climate change, defund the police, critical race theory, all these big things that leach kind of down into the culture. You guys, specific to township committee and local politics, it's really about hands-on understanding of actual issues, whether it's the housing or whether it's the schools or whether it's preservation of historical assets and things of that nature. It's a point to it, get it done, point to it, get it done. And that, if you guys are elected, you and Frank, well, how many people on the township committee will just be you be the only Republicans on that committee?
Yes, it will just be Frank and I.
And then how many people in total are on the committee?
5.
5. Okay. And so it'll be 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
Correct.
Okay. And is there any perceived gridlock with that in the sense that they kind of have you guys 3-2 vote?
Yeah, but there's a certain township committee member who, would like to rescind their vote. This was said publicly regarding fair share housing. So I'm thinking that this particular, correct. I'm thinking this particular township committee member have seen the light, and they will be voting differently.
Wow. Well, that's really cool. And I know you're very busy, and I know I just said if I could grab 25 minutes of your time, and I appreciate you doing that in between this. I tend to agree with everything you've said, everything I've done my homework on. And I think that as a culture, we actually do need to sit down with people face to face as a Democrat, as a Republican, and just talk, because I don't think we're as divided as the media would have us believe. And in this specific case, and in your local township committee, I wish you and Frank a lot of luck. I really do. I think you guys, from what I understand about you as a human being, you seem to be very sweet, nice, and knowledgeable of this space. And I wish you luck in your forthcoming election.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joey.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks again for coming.
Bye-bye.